I think a lot of recruiters are really sales oriented individuals. They know how to sell to customers and they know how to find candidates. But some recruiters only sell to customers and some recruiters only know how to find candidates. And there becomes a symbiotic synergy where not everybody is really equipped from a functional standpoint to start a company.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Keenly, and welcome back to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is the show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change, and instead teaches you how to make that change. Today, we've got a great interview ahead of us, but before we get into that, I just want to tell you a little bit about the show. Essentially, we have shows within the show here. Some days we have interviews with industry thought leaders, and others who are shaking up the space, while other days we cover things like trending topics. Stop by every Tuesday for a Tactical Tuesday episode where we go deep on how to do something that's going to help you drive better results in your day-to-day. Some days we open up for Q&A, and occasionally you get a mic drop episode from Matt where he shares something that's been bouncing around his head within the recruitment space and things you should know. Now, as a reminder, if you like the content we share here on the show, make sure that you subscribe for more. All right, for today's interview, before we get into it, I want to share some stats with you. In 2021, this agency grew from 3 to 10 team members and from 24 to 100 plus clients. 2022, this team grew from 10 members to just over 20 members and over 250 clients. 2023, that grew to over 30 members and we're just shy of 500 clients. 2024, this year, it's not even done yet, they have just under 50 team members and well over 500 active clients. So in times where most agencies are struggling, this has been an unbelievable story of growth. So who's this mystery firm agency? It's Frederick Fox. They're an agency that handles retained search, direct hire, and contract services. And today, Matt sat down with Will Spengler, their founder, as well as Francis Larson, the founder and CEO of Ascen, a back office platform that we partner with, to discuss how this bootstrapped agency has been able to consistently grow year over year. So with that, let's get into it.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again so much for joining today. I'm really excited for this episode and walking through all of our listeners today. We obviously have two special guests, and this is actually going to be a really unique episode for many different reasons. But just to kind of set the stage, I want to talk about why we're having this podcast, and in particular, why Will is here and Francis. So, Francis, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself quickly for all the listeners and just let them know who you are.
Yes, sure. So I'm Francis Larson. I'm CEO at Ascen. We are a employer of record and back office for staffing companies. We're backed by Y Combinator, so this is the top technology seed investor in the world. We have workers all around the country, thousands of folks going through our platform. Tens of millions of dollars every month going through us. And we work closely with Loxo and a few other ATSs. And so we see a lot of the long tail of the large staffing market, the 20,000 firm staffing market in the US. We work with the smaller firms. So we're talking like sub 50 million is really our sweet spot, but we also work with some bigger platforms. And we are have known Matt and Will for a while now.
Awesome. And Will Spengler, a lot of people might not get to know or might not know Will necessarily unless you're in a lot of these recruiting groups, but I've been able to know Will for probably going on almost a decade now, Will?
Yeah, it got to be around 8 years. So, been following you closely. So,
and it's been remarkable and inspiring to see your growth and what you've done. So, congratulations. And I think that's a big part of it, which we'll get into. But I promise, when we looked at this and how we could add value to the recruiting community, we try to understand who's doing it, who's successful, how are they doing it, and rather than just sharing best practices, we kind of have people tell their story, and then we'll tie that together with tech. One of Frederick Fox values is tech forward and bleeding edge, and Will's lived that and breathed it. And so, Will, I don't know if you don't mind, just kind of introduce yourself if you don't mind, and kind of share a bit about your story over the last.
Yeah, so I'm Will Spengler. Started this business, Frederick Fox, in 2019, October 2019. So we actually just hit our 5-year mark 3 days ago, which I'm really excited about. I've been in staffing 13 years, all on the agency side. We should do about 7 million. We had a budget to do about 10 million this year, but with the election, things are a little bit softer than expected. So we should finish anywhere from 7 to 10 million. Our firm now has 47 recruiters. We just onboarded 13 more in the last 2 weeks. It's been bootstrapped from the beginning, so no investment. A lot of what we're trying to do is rebuild a TEMA type model, and I can get into that later. But I think that we have a unique offer for the recruiter. I think the industry is moving away from typical agency where you have a base and a draw. And I think a lot of recruiters are wanting to go independent, wanting to start their own business, get a little bit more of the pie. So I think we've adapted as an agency to appeal to those people that want to be independent, want to make 80%, and we scale also a partnership model within our structure so that people actually have a wealth building component, and a real business opportunity, not just a base draw kind of cash play like you normally have at an agency with 40 to 50% commissions. So we use Loxo. I started using Loxo 7 years ago. The product I think is fantastic. I always say a lot of the other products are what I call brick and mortar, very simple ATS CRMs, and Loxo has a lot of bells and whistles, extremely tech forward. It's why I went with them. And then also a big user of Ascen. We just implemented that about a year ago as a technology product, and we're building out our contract staffing using the tech product. It's been fantastic, Francis. So appreciate the intro to Francis from you, Matt. So I'll pause, but that's a little bit about me.
Well, thanks, Will. And I mean, the challenge here is we have three very busy guys, and if I haven't said this, I imagine everyone's going to want an encore. This will be a very popular episode, and I don't think we'll get through all of it. But Will's a humble guy. There's not many organizations who have scaled from 2 to 50 as quickly as you have, and there's a lot to that. That's not happening, especially in this market, right? You started out, correct me if I'm wrong, but you started out primarily all direct hire. Even you would call yourself exec search, but now as you've grown, you've matured. What was your rationale between kind of starting to augment and add more contract staffing?
Yeah, I think I always knew as a back office you needed to have contract staffing. I think a lot of people look at it like, well, if I have a contract firm, my value or my multiple is higher. I never really went into it to create a value multiple because we have no intention of selling. But I think it's a huge revenue opportunity outside of just the one-time direct hire. You're now moving into residual income and you're billing your customers either weekly or every other week. So when large enterprise or mid-sized companies want to do business with you, having both a contract offer and then also a direct hire offer, I think gets you deeper into the account. You've got stickier contracts, you've got recurring revenue. And I think, most recruiters, if you're going to join an agency, if you only offer direct hire, that recruiter's going to, outgrow that because the opportunity in contract is just absolutely huge. So,
and I know, Francis, when we first started talking and just, learning more about each other's organization, we're talking a lot about segments and size, who's the ideal, customer for you as well as Loxo. Because the recruitment space is a long tail and the bulk of it is small to medium sized organizations they don't have the back office. They don't have the infrastructure to do this. They all want to. I shouldn't say they all, but a lot of organizations would if they understood how to do it. Francis, from your perspective, how do you see it where small, medium-sized organizations come to you? Do they have a lot of awareness of solutions available? Do they know how to do it? And then, can you speak a bit about that and share your experience?
Yeah, so I actually I have a question for Will as well. So we come at it with a very similar ways. I think Will and Frederick Fox are going after it. Is there are a lot of like really good billers in top staffing agencies, and they're making a ton of money for their firm, and they realize they get to their their 30s and 40s, and they're like, wow, I'm like so good at what I do, but I'm really not making that much money versus what my company's making, but I'm doing all the work. And so, I think they come to a point and they're like, I want to go out on my own. So they'll find folks and I'm very curious, Will, like what you think about the franchise market, but a lot of them think, okay, I can set up a franchise, I can set up a new firm, or I can find like another firm that will give me like the lion's share of the profit. So I'm very curious, Will, how like you found this model. Like, had you seen other people do similar stuff? Did you like look at the franchise? Because we have a similar type of customer. I mean, ours are a little bit, I think, more on the mature end. They have a firm they've already set up. But, this model of like, hey, I'm ready to start my own thing. I don't want to fully do it yet. I'm very curious, like, what model, like, how you came to this.
Yeah, and I think what you're doing is genius as an employer of record. I think for that true independent, if you don't have the back office infrastructure and you've never actually done contract, you can't fund it, you don't have the fixed or variable back end set up for it and all the compliance. I always say it's like a can of worms when you get into contract. It's like the second you have it figured out, there's another worm that comes at you. But so I think the employer of record model is great for the independent, but I think there's a point in time, and not to sell against your product too much, and that's what I really like about Ascen, where it's like we've taken on the technology offer and the platform because we can maintain the employer of record, but we can use your guys' portal for onboarding. Like, it's real slick for contractors to go in. We can do the I-9 process. We can do background checks. We can, we can even put in compliance trainings the way you've set that up. And your support team's great as well, Francis. But to answer your question, I think when you look at that person that wants to go independent, I think not everybody wants to necessarily build a business, build the infrastructure in the back end. A lot of people just know that they don't want to be a W-2 anymore, and they don't want to give the lion's share away. So I think our offer kind of sits in between standard agency and being fully out on your own. I think for the person that actually wants to be more than what I call like an individual contributor. So I think a lot of people start a business, but they're really coming from an individual contributor mindset. Like, I just want to earn more for what I'm doing. But like starting a business, actually, if there's any value at the table, it's not, when somebody goes to buy your business, they're not buying your billings. They actually remove that from the value. They're looking at the net income of the underlying recruiting team. So I think people have that wake up when they're a solo operator and they're like, okay, my business has no value. I actually have to build something. And so not a lot of people want to actually build the infrastructure, want to do the administration, have the cash or the funding to even scale up. So I think we have an offer where somebody can come in, earn 80%, work with a team, everybody's independent. So instead of 100%, you're earning 80%. But you're getting shared revenues across a population. You're also getting shared costs. And for the person that wants to actually build a P&L, we move that person to 100% commissions, and we do a 50-50 split on the net income of their team. So we have that wealth building component. So somebody can build a business within our framework. And I think to say how was the idea? It really came from the TEMA model. I was there 3 years. It's almost set up like a real estate brokerage would. You've got a shared service center, and you're supporting the population with your back office, and it's set up like a real estate brokerage. But I think where TEMA kind of missed, in my opinion, was if you become a partner, it wasn't a real partnership. It was a bonus on the P&L that they mocked up. In our system, you actually have ownership of that P&L, and you have tag-along, drag-along rights. So in the event of a sale, you actually have an asset. So I think a lot of what our model is trying to build is for the person that wants to be more than an individual contributor. You can latch onto a system, you don't have to do the back end, and you can still get a 50% deal in the building and kind of latch onto the shared revenues and shared costs. So I'll shut up, a lot of thoughts in there, but that's our model. But
we could go down on sidebars for a lot of these too. And I think, again, I'm sure people want an encore. Maybe they'll want to go deep on some of the model, Will. I know everyone would love to understand that. But there's a reason all three of us are here too, is we're all at the bleeding edge. We're all looking to disrupt kind of the incumbents. And also very, from Francis and Loxo's perspective with Ascen, we looked at an old archaic space, which, as we all know, the recruiting and staffing space, there's a herd mentality, right? Everyone kind of does what they've known for a long time. When people look around, they kind of ask, who do you use? And they have this existing infrastructure, but that's not working. It's not necessarily scalable. It's not the best solution in the market. Will, you're at the bleeding edge. You've built it from the ground up. You've chosen a certain solution. You even went, I think when our renewal was up with Loxo, you were scaling so rapidly. You're like, listen, I don't know if you guys are the right fit for us long-term with where we're going. Can you handle us? And you went and evaluated Bullhorn super deep, right? And some other companies, which is awesome. And you circled back and you've done it. And you also built your own, I think you guys invested a year or so building your own internal back office. Now you're here. So you've gone from very small 2 users to 50. You've evaluated the whole market. You built your own. Can you just help the listeners kind of understand how things are going now? And, if you do things differently, would you have, in the last 2 years to give them advice, what advice would you give them?
Yeah. It's been a heck of a process. The one thing I always say is I wouldn't do it again. 5 years in, if somebody wants to do a startup from scratch, I'm out. But I'm happy where I am now, because it's just, I've got 3 kids, I'm married. And so the first 3 years I was working 7 days a week, somehow held on to my marriage. But I think to your point, we use Loxo. I think it gets better every quarter. I mean, you guys you listen to the customer. You're constantly developing on customer feedback. That's what I enjoy about it. And then when you teamed up with Francis on this technology portal for contract, yes, we were evaluating Bullhorn because I think it seemed to make sense because I thought maybe this is better for like a platform all in one within Bullhorn for the back office side. But I think with the partnership with Francis, we've also built our own internal technology product where we take the payroll data from Ascen so that we can do calculations, calculate our commissions per rep and also our gross margin. And so we can do our own calculations, and then that feeds now into QuickBooks. I know, Francis, you have been trying to configure that API, but we've sort of just developed our own internal product that pulls the placement data from Loxo and then pulls the payroll data, and then is synced to the back end. So we have a retained development team. So we're leveraging both you guys plus our own way of feeding the data both in to get the financials that we need, basically around like contract commission calculation. I think in the beginning, it's all about revenues. And so you have to build a brand and you have to actually have business. So if I were to redo it, I think everything happened in its own stage of development. I think the hardest part is when you actually have to hire a controller. I learned that the hard way. I tried to do a bookkeeper, then a controller. I tried to get the controller to do HR. Then I was like, okay, we actually have to hire an HR person. So we have a controller, an HR, and then I do a lot of the analytics and planning, and we're likely to add another staff accountant. But I think I underestimated the back end, just how much actual work there is. It's not all smoke and mirrors. Back to your point, Francis, I think a lot of big billers, anytime they try to get involved in the back end, I always say ownership kind of turns up the strobe lights and the smoke screens and keeps them out of it. But then when you actually go independent, you're like, well, holy cow, like this actually isn't all smoke and mirrors, and I'll pound through them. But like insurance, general, professional, cyber crime, workers' comp, umbrella privacy policies, you have administrative salaries, you've got banking charges, you've got payroll fees, credit checks, benefits, interest to get funding. You've got payroll taxes, Social Security, Medicare, unemployment. You've got state registered agent setups within each state that you have contractors. There's all kinds of state taxes, filing fees, compliance. Francis, it's like, it's insane how each state has so much administrative follow-up. I probably get 14 letters a week from different states with charges and fines. You get it better than anybody, Francis. So.
Yeah, being a large employer is definitely a challenge. It's people don't understand it. Like, it's actually very complicated having hundreds of employees or thousands of employees like we do, it's new things come up constantly, which is people don't understand the sort of random stuff that comes up if in a regulated space like employment. It's a big deal. It's something interesting that you guys are doing, which I think is really interesting, is like you have Loxo, you've got Ascen, and then you have this internal back office. One thing that we've really seen is that the best customers of ours, they always are really good at piecing together technology. They're not like tech firms per se. They're not like a software firm, but they're definitely more of a company that is they're very good at like selecting technologies, saying this is going to give me an edge, and then this is going to give me an edge, and then they put it together in a way that allows them to grow very quickly. And like the people that just go in and they're going to go, oh, I'm going to go get. I mean, not to say anything bad about like Aviante or some of these other like all-in-one platforms, but like a lot of those platforms, people just buy that, they think they're done, and you're not done. It's actually very hard to have an edge, and like what we've seen are the best folks. They'll find the best technology that's going to give them an edge, and they piece it together. Whereas some of the all-in-one platforms, it's just like they select it and they think they're done, and they're not done to have a real edge.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been part of the journey too, is like we want to build our own database, because if you're solely relying on Aviante's reporting, like what if you want to play with that data, or you want to do operating analytics, or you want to do different types of calculations for financial information? So I think we're on that journey right now, is like actually building our own backend, PostgreSQL database, and actually our own internal product that pulls from Loxo's API. And then it'd be great to get access to your API, Francis, but I know we're not big enough yet. But we've kind of just download that data and then we upload it into ours, which is a good workaround. So yeah, I agree with you. I think having your own database so that you can get the insights that you need is key. So
one thing I want to talk about as well is the market and evolution. And Francis, when did you guys found Ascen?
It's now 6 years on. It's 2018.
6 years. It takes a decade to build enterprise software, no matter what, and any organization of scale. But a lot of people also don't understand this. Is the market's shifting pretty quickly. Everything has to be more modern and elegant. And Francis, when our teams sat down and met, a lot of people don't even know. Will, but like the integration is a drag and drop, and it webhooks, and it yanks out all the information automatically. But Francis, it looks like you guys have added a lot of products and services over time. So what you're talking about is you can kind of have your best fit customer that has some acumen to kind of plug things together, which you can do. But also as you get to scale, you guys might not necessarily have to. So you guys have an EOR option, and then you have a software only. Francis, can you share a little bit about that, just to help educate users if they didn't know this solution existed? How are you any different from some of the traditional like incumbents in your space?
Yeah, so the first way to understand it is there's front office and back office. So front office is like Loxo, ATS, market intelligence, what's the term for it? That you're not an ATS, it is a
talent intelligence. Yeah, I like it. It's got a good ring.
But that's like it's still in the front office, all about like recruiting, managing that pipeline, managing the database, enriching data, all that stuff about like actually like getting the sales and recruiting. That's front office. And I think you all have a CRM too as well. So like all of that's in the front office. And then there's back office. So that's like payroll, onboarding, timesheets, invoicing, accounting, expenses. All of that stuff is in the back office. And there's two ways to do that. So you can do it yourself, and you can run payroll, and you can file, do all the taxes, and you can you'll probably use some software, and you can go out and register and get your workers' comp and do all that stuff. And so you could use Ascen or other back office platforms. You can use Ascen and just use software. So you run all your back office, but you have to do all the filings, all the insurance, everything yourself. So that's what Will and Frederick Fox does. They do everything themselves, but they use a company like ours to manage a part of their back office. The other way to do it is to use an employer of record. So that's where someone else, so if you use us, it would be us, someone else becomes the employer of record, so they're the legal employer of your workers, and takes on all the insurance liability for workers' comp, general liability, professional liability, takes on all the payroll responsibility, all the compliance, wage and hour, all of that stuff. done also within a platform. So Ascen is, you can run the back office just as a software, or you can run it under our employer of record. Employer of record is our biggest area. That's where we have like the most staffing agencies, and we see some of the highest growth agency. I mean, we have some folks, and this is crazy, we have some folks on our employer of record, they come into the US and they'll have like 10 recruiters, and they scale from 0 to $30 million in 24 months. And with 0 back office people, 0. They just have us. And so like if you really want to grow extremely quickly, you really have to use an employer of record, or you have to use somebody like the independent model like Frederick Fox has. You just there's just no way you can build that infrastructure quickly enough to be able to scale across the United States. It's just impossible. You would have to hire, like Will did, you have to hire an HR person, you have to hire like a risk person eventually, like maybe a general counsel, like a payroll person, and all of a sudden you have like 5 people on your payroll that are just dead weight until you hit a certain scale. So our philosophy in EOR is like, if you want to go really quickly, you have to have someone else do the actual like legal compliance for you. And so EOR is a great product, but also folks use the back office. But that's just like one part. Front office is a huge part. That's like the edge that people have. And then back office really should be something that you like either use a software or outsource. Doing it fully manually or doing it yourself is like very difficult. So that's why like we think that most people should focus their edge on stuff like Loxo, front office, your sales strategy, your niche. That should be where you do your innovative work. Whereas back office, leave it to somebody else. Don't try to be innovative there. It's a solved problem.
But I think what's unique about this is that, especially Will, you lived it. You went through from the ground up, and you were able to kind of build your own. And largely, like, I mean, you guys did it internally, but Loxo and Ascen and your own, that powers what, the vast majority of your kind of stack?
Yeah. I see the way I looked at it, like, Francis, you have a certain level of scale where your pricing is really strong. So for somebody that's a one-man band or like less than 10-person firm, like the pricing, the advantage is to go and latch onto your scale because you've got that cost down, right? Because you can spread it over so many contractors because your fixed costs are spread, right? For me, I always looked at it as it's a critical path as a company that we have to have it in-house because I used to use back office staffing solutions. I've kind of moved away from them personally, and I was really attracted to you guys because you had that technology offer, which fits really well, but still allows us to be the employer of record and still allows us to build our infrastructure. So I think the breaking point, and not to sell against the EOR, but I think the breaking point is like 20, 30 contractors, somewhere in there, where like now you've got 2 to 4 million in contract revenues a year. Then it becomes a point of like, okay, do I just keep running with Ascen and they do it, or do I start to take the steps in the critical path to become the employer of record? And some of the things we were running into for me was it's hard to sell an enterprise business and say, look, I've got this tri-party agreement, and sorry to sell against the EOR a little bit, but it is tough on the front end to say, hey, one of my customers is Florida Crystals, $8 billion company. They do Domino sugar. Blasting out my customer to people listening, but they're going to say, well, who's this third party? And then what ends up happening is all the business is running through Ascen, not through Frederick Fox, and we've got some kind of tri-party agreement. It is a tough sell with an enterprise level customer that really just wants one, not a tri-party, just wants one staffing company. And a lot of customers will say, well, you're a staffing company, why can't you be the employer of record? Like, what is this? Now, I know a lot of people are slick at overcoming that, but that's where I was like, okay, this is going to be painful, but this is a critical path. We can use the technology front end that you guys have, but we could stay the employer of record. We can fund it, and then we can get that scalability after 30 contractors if we price our internal burden correctly. So that's the way I looked at it, but I see the advantages to both, right?
Yeah, you made that critical investment, and that's the thing. It takes like a pain to be able to do it. You have to think, okay, I'm going to hire an HR person. I'm going to hire a controller. I'm going to hire like a payroll admin person. There's like probably 4 critical roles that you have to have. And some people can do multiple things in the beginning. So you probably did a ton of stuff yourself. in the very beginning. So you're doing sales, you're doing recruiting, you're doing your internal team management, and you're doing some other stuff. And so you've got these 4 people. So like we think that number's higher than like 5 million. We think it's probably 20 million where you really have the economy of scale to do it in house. It's like 20 million, 30 million
Okay,
sales.
that's
like
interesting.
right then.
Yeah.
But like if you take the huge amount of effort, you could do it earlier, obviously, and then you get operating leverage as you grow. But I think like your model, like you guys, you're helping like independent folks. They really like they want you to do it. You couldn't have like another cook in the kitchen. Like somebody comes to Frederick Fox, they want everything just to be easy.
Right. We handle it exactly.
Francis, do you have? I know you have these conversations all the time. We also do. Um, what advice would you give to companies that maybe just kind of dabble in contract? They want to aggressively lean into it. What advice would you give them if they were to partner with you guys, and how would you make it easier, regardless of what size they're at today?
I mean, one of the things, and I think Will has stuff on this too, is so, like if you're doing perm placements, that's really, really great to start. Really, really great to start because it's cash flow. You make a placement and now you've got 30 grand and you can fund operations. But in a way, when you do a permanent placement, it's kind of like selling an asset, right? It's like you're like flipping a house. You're selling an asset, but now it's done. But if you keep the person on your payroll and you staff them out, you have this asset that produces cash flow. And you have like a thing that's recurring that you can use in the future. So all of that recruiting effort, right? All of that stuff you got to found that person, you're going to be able to reuse it again and again and again for different clients. So like we see this constantly. People will staff out the same person, for years to different clients. And they get this loyal group of contractors that really wants to work with them, and they can staff them out for years, and they have this asset. But if you do perm stuff, you're selling that asset. Yeah, you get the cash flow now, but you don't have that lifetime of cash flows from the contract stuff. And so what we've seen is like the best firms that to grow really, really big, it's extremely hard to be 100% perm, 100% direct hire, and be a big company. Some folks have done it, but very, very few. And they're getting like 1x multiplier on 1x multiple on their revenue, 2x on the revenue. And it's just like it's sort of a feast or famine business. And you constantly have to find new business, and not only find new business, you have to find new candidates. And so it's like if your employees don't show up, like if your internal recruiters don't show up, you don't earn any money. Like your income stops. And so that's what we've seen, that like the folks that are the healthiest firms, they have a good mix. Even maybe it's 50-50, maybe it's a little bit more shaded toward contract. But if you're doing 100% direct hire, you're on a treadmill that very few firms. There's a couple of firms that have done it really well. Like there's these guys, I think they're called True Search. They did a really good job at this. Really, really good job. And they're like a case study that people have, like, and it was like all executive. But like very few people make that work. The people, if you want to make money in staffing, you have to have contract staffing. That's where that's where money is made in the business, is there. Everything else is good for cash flow. You got to do it. Clients are going to ask it. You can't turn it down, probably. You're probably not going to turn it down. But if you can't do contract, you're like, why are you in this game? Like you're in the wrong game if you can't have some contract.
Are you guys at a point in your business? I know we're talking about UK and Europe, and you're helping a lot of companies expand over to the US. Are you at a point where you're able to help companies that really want this? So I know we have conversations, hundreds a month, that are desperate. They're just saying, just provide your recommendations for different solutions. And so we're super consultative, as Will knows. Sometimes you have to have really smart people like Will that are willing to build some on their own, roll some out with different solutions like Ascen. But are you at a point where if somebody just said, hey, I just want the easy button. I'm using Loxo, I want the easy button. Can Ascen just help me do contract? And I want to pitch them over the fence, and you'll take it from there, timesheets, payroll, EOR, all of that?
Yeah. I mean, so EOR is usually for folks, they've started a company, they have an LLC, they're doing some business, and then now, okay, I want to add contract. Or they're from an outside country, like we have a ton of folks from the UK, and they're like, okay, I have a great contract book in the UK, now I want to do it in the US. And so for those types of folks, really easy. They just turn it on, boom, they can get started. For individual recruiters, sometimes like they want to use a Frederick Fox. They don't want to set up a business, they don't want to set up an LLC, or they don't want to start registering in the States, or they don't want to they don't want to be a business. They don't want to build a brand. They want to use someone else's brand. like to grow their business. So we found that those folks might want a different solution. But for folks who just they want to grow in the United States very rapidly and they don't want to do any setup, EOR is 100% what they should do. Later on, they can think about switching to something else. That they should think about that if you're doing 25 million in sales, 30 million in sales, 50 million in sales, you have plenty of money to start getting operational leverage. You have a ton of money to mess around with, but like early, like from 0 to 25, like you're talking about like pennies. You should really just focus on growth. You should grow to get to scale, where now you can start playing financial strategy. But before then, it's all about growth. If you don't have customers, if you can't grow your business because you're bogged down by operational stuff, like forget it. Like why even be in this game? You should just grow until you get to scale. Now you can start messing around trying to like improve profitability.
Yeah, so this is live, this works. You just proved this is exactly what your business is. Will, you've walked through it. So I guess one of my last questions, and I'm just curious if you guys have questions for each other, just to add more value to this episode here, which I've really, really enjoyed, and I know we're all slammed, so thank you guys so much for taking some time here. Will, why do you think more people, I know this is the question that always come up, a lot of these groups, they always want to, it depends on the economy. Some people want more of a lifestyle business, but the groups and firms that want to grow, they want to expand, they want to build a company of scale. Like, why do you think they struggle so much with not being able to make that gap or make the leap that you have from maybe just doing a couple contract consultants here or there versus taking the leap and being able to augment and having two arms of their business? So perm and contract.
Well, I guess it depends. It depends on who we're comparing and different. But I think a lot of, and I want to say this nicely, is like I think a lot of recruiters are really sales-oriented individuals. They know how to sell to customers and they know how to find candidates. But some recruiters only sell to customers and some recruiters only know how to find candidates. And there becomes a symbiotic synergy where, not everybody is really equipped from a functional standpoint to start a company. Now, let's say you're a recruiter that can do a 360. Well, you may be a great salesperson, but then you don't really have the financial acumen and the back office, the HR, the payroll, the compliance, the actual business side. So I think it's hard for some individual operators to get out of the hamster wheel of I sell, then I recruit, I sell, then I recruit. I always say the third hat is building a business. So I sell, I recruit, but when am I building a business and what leverage do I have underneath of it? And so not everybody has that business hat. If you read Kiyosaki, he talks about, do you want to be a solopreneur? The next step is the business, right? And then you become the investor. If you guys know the W-2 solopreneur, anyways. And it's a lot to become a business and to actually look at what is my framework, what is my structure, what is my policies, how does this actually have any meat on the bone underneath? You're no longer just an individual contributor selling and recruiting. I think a lot of people get stuck there, right? And then the other side of it is, why would a recruiter work for your company? What do you offer another recruiter? And why wouldn't a recruiter just start their own business? So I think a lot of what we try to offer is we have an offer that actually it's a very thin margin. We're a very thin margin business, but we're getting a lot of interest because people are making twice the commission for doing the same job they would do at a JoBot or Robert Half. So people love it here. We've got a great culture. We've got a lot of jobs. We've got a back-end infrastructure. So I don't know if I answered your questions, but I don't think every recruiter, you need a business person, not just a salesperson to get a company to grow, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that was a great answer. Well, I mean, these are three very disruptive companies. Will, again, I know you don't realize, but you would inspire a lot of companies who want to do what you have done. And I think just kind of you sharing your story today has been super helpful. Francis, I've been inspired by you guys, what you're doing. And I know our approach in the market is to disrupt the old incumbents, and you guys are doing it and getting a lot of traction. And seems like you guys are adding new features and functions and services all the time. So yeah, I was excited to have you here. And do you guys have any questions for each other or anything you wanted to add for the listeners we didn't touch on today?
No, I'm thankful for the introduction to Francis. We're loving the product. I'd love to get big enough with you guys so I can actually get API access. But I'm gonna earn that from you, buddy. I'm gonna get there. So I don't know. No, I'm good. I'm happy to be in business with both of you guys. It means a lot, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, Matt, thanks for having us on.
Thanks for joining today, guys. And yeah, we'll be excited to hear the feedback we get from the community. But I know a lot of people learned things today that they had no clue about. So thanks for helping educate the market and being part of it. And yeah, everyone have a wonderful rest of your day.
All right. Well, hopefully you all enjoyed that episode. It was a great one, as I said, between Matt, Will, and Francis. So hopefully you're able to learn a few things within there and it inspires you to start incorporating it into some of your day-to-day moving forward. So as we wrap, Becoming a Hiring Machine is a production of Loxo. If you like this episode, but you're not sure where to go next, we've got a link to a similar one, and you can find those in the show notes in the description of your favorite podcast streaming platform, as well as on our website. Full video episodes are available on YouTube, but if you ever have a question for us, send it our way, podcast@loxo.co. Lastly, if you did enjoy this episode, make sure that you leave us a quick rating in your podcast streaming platform. It only takes 3 seconds, but it's going to help other recruiters like you to find us. All right, everyone, that's the show. That was a phenomenal interview. Until next time, bye, y'all.